Good morning, everyone. How's it going out there? Good, good. So apologies for being a couple minutes late. We're gonna have a great, quick conversation here for you. I'm going to try to open it up to the audience Q&A at the end. I can't see you that well, so make sure you when I go to Q&A, just dance around a little bit. Uh, so thanks for being here, everyone. My name is Jake Williams. I'm the associate publisher of StateScoop.com, based in Austin, Texas. If you're not familiar with StateScoop, StateScoop is an online news publication that covers the intersection between state and local government. Today we are talking about data and our democracy. I won't read the title of the panel because it's up there, but we are here with a great group of guests. So directly to my right, your left, is Hillary Braseth. She's the director, Braseth, sorry, is the director of product for Votes. Next to her, we have Rebecca DeHart. She's the CEO at FairCount. And then on the end there is Roop Singh. He's the founder and principal of Intuit Factory. So again, short on time, we're going to just jump right into it. So we'll start with you, Hillary. What does data and democracy mean to you and to the work you do? And tell me a little bit about your background and how that matters.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jake. So as Jake mentioned, I head up product at Votes, and we think about data and democracy all the time. We are a new mobile elections platform, making it possible and secure to vote with your smartphone in elections. We've been around for about 3 years, and we leverage the latest developments in smartphone technology as well as blockchain technology to log an aggregate count of the vote. So our focus is really on securing identity and then making sure that the integrity of the election is full of integrity by virtue of that data being logged on the blockchain in a secure way.
Rebecca, same question to you. What does data and democracy mean to you and the work that you're doing at FairCount?
Well, good morning. Thanks for joining us today. So FairCount is an organization that is committed to getting a fair and accurate count in the census in Georgia and across the nation. And data and democracy is very important. The outcome of the census is, of course, the data that our democracy is dependent upon for federal funding for every program, federally down to the states. And so we need to make sure that the data that we're working on to ensure our communities are counted is up to date and inclusive of everyone. And we're particularly concerned with hard to count communities because those are the communities that are left out in the census year after year whenever we do it. So that's what we focus on. We do it by combining traditional organizing. We're doing some testing of some relational digital tools, which is some exciting work. And then we're also trying to meet some of the new challenges that this census poses, mainly that this census will be online for the first time ever. And for instance, in Georgia, if you were to look at about the 88 hard to count counties out of 159, more than 50% of them don't have reliable access to the internet. So how can we close that divide and make sure that people can participate this year? I know a lot of what we'll talk about today is on blockchain and different technologies, and while I can speak some to theoretical, I do have a technology director that's much better at it than I am, so I can talk a little bit more about execution on what's happening with the 2020 census.
That's great. And Roop, same question to you again. Data and democracy. What does it mean to you and the work that you're doing?
Sure. So I'm a technology strategist. I talk about topics at the intersection of technology, business, and society. And as such, I gave a recent TED talk on the same topic of how is data being used, who owns your digital identity, and unlocking the blockchain revolution. What are the answers that we need, and maybe this technology can offer those answers. So to me, here's how the world looks today. There's a few forces at play. We live in a post-fact economy and a post-fact information age. We also live in an era where AI has taken over a lot of the information that we see and then we absorb and make decisions with. So there was a book that came out in 1988 called Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky. Some of you may have heard of it. Political Economy of Mass Media. It's about 20 years ago. And you see that we have moved on from that era and we have actually much more sophisticated tools and platforms and technology to enable such influence. The third force that I see happening is the way we consume data, the way we consume information, the way we make decisions. So part of that is how Americans in general and people across the world consume information. 50 to 70% of people today consume news or what they think of news on social media platforms. That's a huge shift from 20 years ago when we never had such a thing. So if you look at all these forces, the question becomes to me of one simple word: trust. What can we trust? And there's two parts to it. One is authenticity: who is saying what is the identity of the individual, and how is that impacted? Do we have control over our own identity? Where is that consent? And then the second part of it is influence. How much are we being influenced, and how much have these technologies accelerated so that they have such a great degree of influence on how, as a society, we make choices, how we express our will. So that's what data and democracy means to me.
So I want to stay on the blockchain point for a moment. It's a topic that is dominating government technology conversations. It's a topic that's dominating technology conversations. What do you say to blockchain skeptics, to people who say it's a fad? We on State Scoop's sister publication, we just published a story called "What is Blockchain and Why is Everyone So Mad About It?"
Yeah.
What do you say to these skeptics? What do you say to these people who don't believe in the power of blockchain?
I say you should meditate.
I'm going to
So
need
you-
you to elaborate.
So I teach a program called Blockchain Strategy for Business Leaders, and I come across this question very often. So there's a bunch of skeptics that say, well, this is just a fad. What's so different? What's so new? Why are we making such a big deal about it? And the other part of the skeptics say, well, it's not scalable, it's not mature yet, it's not usable. And most people, and we can take a poll around here, how many of you think of blockchain synonymous with cryptocurrencies? Most of you. So blockchain is an underlying technology behind a lot of these cryptocurrencies. And I will concede that it is not as mature as we would like it to be yet. We are in the second phase of evolution of blockchain. It came around, 2009 with the advent of Bitcoin. And we are now in the second phase where we will see this technology being adopted in so many different areas, including voting, including information, what you see online in social media, including media, including digital advertising, which is a whole another field where blockchain can actually cut down a lot of fraud. So there's a lot to learn here. The challenge with skeptics is blockchain is a very multidisciplinary field. You can't just look at technology and understand the potential implications of it. You have to understand disruption. You have to understand economics. You have to understand social sciences. You have to understand business models. And that's once you have all that in your viewpoint, then you can appreciate what is the massive transformative level of change this will bring.
So Hillary, I mean, votes, at least on my radar, came to fame with the pilot that you did in West Virginia, allowing folks overseas to cast ballots during the 2018 election, I believe. Votes runs on blockchain technology. What has votes' response been to the people saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm skeptical of blockchain to begin with. I'm also skeptical of putting our election on a platform like that"?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things there. First of all, Votes uses blockchain just as one piece of the overall puzzle of how we build our technology. So as I mentioned, we leverage the latest developments and everything the thing that all of us carry in our pockets, which are these mobile devices, which have a lot of very enhanced security measures, including biometrics, to verify the identity of an individual. So that we leverage along with cryptography, and then the vote itself is stored on blockchain technology. And I think it's really important to piggyback on what Roop was saying about we need to take a step back and ask ourselves, what are we referring to when we talk about blockchain? And my entrance into this space, I also thought blockchain was associated with that blockchain is Bitcoin, when in fact there is this underlying infrastructure that becomes much more compelling for other industries. And so the way that we use it at Votes is very different than how it's used with Bitcoin. So with Bitcoin, where anybody around the world can run what we call a node or a validator, so as data passes into the network, anybody can be a part of that system and validating that piece of data. Rather than that, with Votes, we use what's called a public permissioned network. It's a hyperledger framework for the cyber curious. And the difference with that is all of the nodes have to be run within a geographical boundary. So in our case, and with US elections, anybody wanting to run a node has to be physically located in the United States. And we have a very strong KYC vetting process for anybody wanting to be a part of that system. But the reason we do that is because that allows us to most closely mirror the way that elections are currently run today, where when you have people in the back office counting the paper ballots, you've got somebody who's a Democrat, somebody who's a Republican observing the counting happening. In the case of this public permission network, we could have the Democratic Party running one node, the Republican Party running another, some nonprofits, auditors, universities. It opens up this whole ecosystem and offers transparency of the overall vote while not compromising anonymity of the voter. And that's the power that we really see blockchain offering, is that we could arrive to one day where, which is what we're building toward, where when you cast your ballot, you can go to the blockchain yourself as a voter and say, that's my vote, that's how I voted, it was counted and it was counted correctly. Whereas in our current system, I don't have that assurance. I mail in my absentee ballot and I just hope for the best.
I want to pick up on a point that you made there. You talked about building voting on a blockchain around the system that we currently have. When you look at something like the census, there's a lot of infrastructure there, and there's literally centuries of infrastructure to develop a census. And you talked about how this is going to be the first digital census, the first census online. What do you think about when you think about the future of a blockchain census, or a technology like blockchain being used for a task really so vital to democracy and so vital to making elections even possible? Rebecca.
Oh.
Rebecca first.
So I think that's a great question, and to piggyback on also what you were saying too, is that it has to come from sort of a holistic space. And while I don't pretend to be an expert in blockchain, I do look at what could be possible for 2030. And what people are moving towards, particularly with this move to the Census Online, and how technology can help us capture communities that are historically marginalized, disenfranchised, or otherwise hard to find. And so what I've seen a lot is looking at that technology in it's the non-response period that follows up after you get that first notice. You should participate in the census. It's when those enumerators come and knock on your door. A lot of times people don't respond to that. A lot of times we don't even know the doors exist, which is why we miss so many people. And so the idea that you could use blockchain and have validators around that could help really identify who it is that we're missing and what kind of community those folks are representative could be really powerful. But I think the other thing we have to keep in mind is that it will only be successful if we're organized in a smart way on the ground. The census only happens every 10 years, and so the funding and the infrastructure in order to support communities, particularly historically marginalized communities, to be able to participate is very scant. And organizations that do census work tend to have to tighten their belts every 10 years and then find a way that they're going to go out there and help with that organizing. So I think a strong organizational infrastructure will really help bring that technology forward.
I want to piggyback on that point and move away from blockchain for a second and talk a little bit about broadband access. So, you mentioned that a bunch of communities that you need to touch for the census are hard to reach or impossible to reach with the internet, with technology. What work do you need done to build that infrastructure, to build that broadband infrastructure, to ensure that those folks have access, Rebecca?
So I think this is some of our interesting work, most interesting work. Our technology coordinator is actually in South Georgia today on the Florida-Georgia line. We're doing 7 installations in 7 counties that has little access to the internet today in traditionally black churches. So what we need is the internet everywhere, but that doesn't still solve our problem. We also need internet literacy. And we need communities to go, or we need folks to be able to go into communities that don't have comfort using the internet and make sure that they have some sort of comfort using it before the census happens. We're trying to locate trainers right now to teach people how to start a Gmail account, how to go on Facebook to look at pictures of their grandkids, get that comfort level up before we ask them to participate in the census. So really, the need is massive. And y'all, if it was easy, it would have been done before. Just even putting in these installations is quite a challenge, but we hope to have 100 of them done by the census.
And Roop and Hillary, we'll get to you after I ask this to Roop. I mean, technology and the internet access is really key to any sort of blockchain-related election happening. What work are you doing? What work do you need done to get access to those hard-to-reach areas so that they can leverage this technology?
Yeah. The way I see this is it's a U.S. competitiveness issue. So I was part of a UN organization about, 13, 14 years ago. And at that time, we used to study broadband penetration in U.S. Guess what is the ranking of United States in broadband penetration in the world? Just take a guess, from 1 to 50. You have your number? Back then it was 17. I'm not sure what it is now. So US is not a leader in broadband penetration or the usage of public use of technology per se. If you look in Asia, Japan, Korea, China, they have much more penetrated routes into the information highway, so to say. So to me, it becomes a question of, do we want to be in the leading edge? If we call ourselves in the United States the leading democracy and we still use paper-based ballots, that's it's unthinkable as a technologist for me. It's just being straight up. I mean, even look at India, where that is the largest participatory democracy in terms of population, and they've started to use EVMs. So I think applications like votes and EVMs are the right direction to go. And then you have a shared infrastructure layer based on blockchain that can store that data, and we can prove the veracity of that data.
I'm going to take this question to Hillary next, but audience, we've got 5 minutes left. Get your questions ready. And again, I can't really see you, so I'm going to try to see you, but I'm going to ask Hillary this question, and then I'm going to go to you for additional questions. So just be ready. So Hillary, with a product like Votes, again, connectivity, internet access, super important. What are you doing to help promote that, help get folks that internet access, and also what do you need done, either from a governmental level or a societal level, to get people where they need to be?
Absolutely. That's definitely important for inclusivity, especially with voting potentially being offered via smartphone. I think we're building the channel for a foreseeable future, and it is one that will always probably complement the option to still show up in person at the polls and submit a paper ballot. So currently the way that we've built the technology is the second that you as a voter press submit on your mobile ballot, that also generates at the jurisdiction level a formatted paper ballot that can immediately be fed into those trash can like looking machines that tabulate every other single ballot that's being cast on election day. So right now, where we're piloting with a lot of overseas citizens, being able to re-engage in our democracy in ways that they haven't been. Historically, their turnout is at 7%. Those voters overseas are, in hard-to-reach areas as well, where they have been able to get access to broadband and can submit via the mobile networks those ballots. So we're definitely building toward the future, and very much agree that being able to extend that access as much as possible is of critical importance. And just quickly, Estonia, if anybody is more curious, is an incredible leader in this space. Every single Estonian citizen has a digital identity. Every single service, healthcare, voting, what have you, is via the digital platform. In fact, there's only 3 services I learned that require you to show up physically in person. And I know 2 of those. One is to get married, and the other is to get divorced.
Well, that's unity. Audience, I got 2 minutes and 50 seconds for questions from you. We don't have any mics in the audience, but just shout out your question and I'll repeat it out. Yes. Yeah. So the question was, how does gerrymandering affect the work that you do? So let's send that to Rebecca first. That fair count is a
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So let me tell you a little bit about the history of our organization. Well, we're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We're founded by Stacey Abrams, and we were founded in the dark days after the election in 2018 when we still didn't know what was going on in Georgia. And she's always thinking 10 steps ahead of anyone else. And we started talking about, with redistricting coming up, what is going to happen. And we thought, if we wait until redistricting, then we've lost it, because redistricting won't be fair unless we have a fair and accurate count in the census. And I say fair and accurate because you can have an accurate count. You can't have one without the other. You can't have accuracy unless we ensure that there's fairness for people to participate. And we're dealing with an administration that just weaponized the census against certain groups of people with the potential inclusion of a citizenship question and the reverberation and the fear that that has. And we found out a lot about that the purpose of that question was to make sure that certain people didn't participate so that the lines could be drawn differently in redistricting. So we're going to be fighting disinformation campaigns that happen internationally. We're going to be fighting disinformation campaigns that happen nationally and locally to get people to participate in the census, because it's a pillar of civic participation: the census, redistricting, and voting. And all three of them rely on a fair and accurate process for all of them.
Roop, Hillary, we have about 15 seconds for each of you to respond to that if you'd like to talk about, and if you have any input on gerrymandering's impact on your work. Anything? No? Okay.
In our case, we work directly with each jurisdiction, and so you have to be a registered voter. Of course, I think if we look into 2030, 2040, the landscape of how we organize and govern ourselves will look inevitably quite different. So we're excited about what technology might be able to offer that.
So that is unfortunately time for us. Hopefully these guys can stick around. Can you all stick around at the end of the panel? So we'll all be here off to the side here. There's a panel directly after this one happening on this stage. So we're going to get out of here, but we'll be around if you have any questions for these great folks. But please give these folks a hand. Thank you so much.